I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you 7 years ago, barely anybody talked about, non-invasive neurostimulation with light and sound. Like people would be like, what? You
Yeah.
can use light and sound to like stimulate the brain? Um, People used to laugh at me.
Welcome to the ReeThink podcast. Today I have another guest with me. Welcome, Mai. She's a PhD in. I always trip up of it. Maybe you can tell it.
I'll help you out.
Yeah. And also
Yeah,
the CEO and co-founder of OptoCeutics. That's correct, right? OptoCeutics, exactly. Yeah, but
AutoCeutics, yeah, it's
help
correct.
yourself, introduce yourself, because I'm not able to pronounce your field of study correctly. So I give you the chance to correct my error on that.
No, it's fine. I'm Mai Nguyen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of OptoCeutics. I did my undergraduate degree in microbiology and PhD in neuroendocrinology at UC Berkeley. Yeah, so I've been on this journey for about 7 years now in understanding neurostimulation and how it can impact not only cognitive decline, but also, attention and alertness and sleep as well.
Okay, that's great. And I mean, before we started this podcast, we already had a small rift about it. And the thing is, so you come from a family of 8 children, and you were the youngest. So how
Yes,
was it like growing up with so many children?
it's really chaotic. It's really fun though, right? My parents didn't have to pay attention to children 3 and above, so which means I got to do whatever the heck I wanted. My siblings were basically my playmates, and I think I learned a lot on how to be personable, but at the same time, how to get sort of myself to have the attention, sort of the youngest child in the family. But it's really fun. It helps you sort of train grit and learn how not to get beat up as a kid. It's great.
And how big was the difference to your next sibling, next older sibling?
Um, we're all 2 years apart.
Okay,
So, my oldest is actually 16 years older than I am. So it's a very large age gap.
yeah. And have you been the odd one or?
Odd. I would say we're all odd in our own ways, but yes, I've always been the more mischievous and black sheep of the family is what you like to call it, the weird one. But yeah, it's fun. I call that a positive. I think to be unique.
I take your word on it. But what do you mean when you tell like you have been the black sheep?
Yeah, I mean, like I've always been the one who, none of my siblings play sports, and I play sports all the time growing up. None of them decided they wanted to go into higher education. We all immigrated here from Vietnam, so I wasn't born in the U.S. I actually came when I was only 3 years old. And so like my brothers didn't go to college. The only people who went to college was me and my two sisters, really. And my two sisters only did their bachelor's degree, and so I was the only one who went on and got a PhD in science, buckle the tradition of Asian family being like lawyers and med doctors or whatnot. My mom still doesn't understand what I do, but it's completely fine. I'll let her know eventually. But yeah, I'm kind of quirky. I think my professors didn't understand me because they're like, "Mai, you're way too personable to be a PhD in neuroscience, but you're also like, okay, you know your stuff." So I'm always somewhat in between, as I would like to say. Like, I don't fit in every single compartment that most traditional individuals fit in,
Hmm.
which I do attest that to be an advantage rather than a disadvantage in my opinion. But you know, yeah.
I'm curious about that. Why do you think it's an advantage? And can you give you an example where you think this particular trait was an advantage for you?
Yeah, I think to me is that if you are typical PhD and scientist, no harms or no foul to anybody who's a scientist. Like we're sort of actually very introverted. We go into PhD because we don't like humans very much, or we don't like to be going into this kind of awkward in our own way. My professor is very awkward, right? He's always like, I don't know about this. And I'm more of the, I'll talk to everybody and anybody and, just hang out. Like, and most scientists, if you ask them, hey, are you into sports? They're like, no, I'm into books and science. And I'm more like, I'm a sports fanatic. You can ask me anything from football, European football, American
Mm,
football, basketball, softball. I'll give you all the stats and like who's playing what team. So being relatable, I think, is a very big advantage because when you
mm-hmm.
go and talk to people and you can relate to them, yes,
Yeah.
you can relate to the scientists, but at the end of the day, in order to have translational science and technology being in the general society where 90% of the people are and not the 10% of the researchers and highly educated individuals, being able to have a conversation and relate to get them to understand where you're coming from is definitely an advantage. So that's why I think having a little bit of a street smart versus book smart is very important. You can't have just street smart and you can't just have book smart. So there has to be a balance. And I think for me, I'm trying. I learned that from being at the flea market with my parents to have street smarts, but also having seven brothers and sisters who will beat the street smarts into you is really nice.
It helps you to blend in. That's so fascinating that you have this like different interests. I have it too. I find myself, that's why that I'm the odd one, because it's almost like I can relate to anybody, and on at the same token not, because for instance I'm also into quite a lot of sports, but I'm also heavily into reading and all this kind of stuff. And then I almost don't fit any category where I can put myself in and say, okay, these are the people I relate the most to it, because I find myself like, that's
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun. And I think when you do find people who are similar to you and you can connect, that's going to be the next generation. That's going to be the next people who are going to be able to excel, is those who can translate and understand not only the scientific, the technical work, but then have it be relatable to the general public and create impact is going to be the world of difference, right? We can't be just bookworms and sitting there and doing the science. We have to be change makers that we want to see.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And taking this further, I mean, you blend a couple of different topics together. So on the one hand, like neuroscience, light technology in entrepreneurship. Um, this is not a field that a lot of people combine. So what drew you to neuroscience in your case?
I think for me, neuroscience has always been something that I'm intrigued in because we don't know a lot about it. But
Hmm.
at the same time, it comes from a personal space, seeing my parents' brain decline and wanting to understand the impact that it can have in aging and the world is talking more about the brain. We're understanding more and more, even though it's the least understood, in my opinion, right? Other people might have other opinion, but in my opinion, it's still least understood organ in the body. We don't know a lot about it, and there's a lot of diseases that are associated with it that you don't know what to do with. And so a lot of it has been in the books. Again, we have neuroscience department. We've been studying the brain for centuries now. And I think a lot of times we don't bring that translative technology or entrepreneurship into the real world. Years ago
Hmm.
when I first started doing my PhD, everything is very academic. We don't really talk about like
Hmm.
creating technologies. It's all about drug, right? And so
Hmm.
understanding that in order to bring something that can be translated from science to society, you
Hmm.
have to create something that people can understand. But
Yeah.
if there's nothing out there, you need to build it. And so understanding how do I learn how to build something? How do I put myself out of my comfort zone, right? Which is very much in the science.
Yeah.
Start a company, learn how to build a company and build a culture around it. But there's also a lot of administration and technicalities that is business. Okay. I love the saying. I say it all the time. You can teach business to
Hmm.
STEM individuals, You can't teach them to business people. And so a lot of times seeing individuals who are in business trying to understand and read a paper in science, and then they go and start a company that end up like not doing what's real and true and credible to the science itself is very disheartening. And so if no one was going to do something, I figured, why not me? That's the mentality, right? Why not?
That's an interesting take. Have you seen a example of that?
Of someone like me?
No, someone that came from business and tried to bring something from STEM into business and ultimately failed.
I think there's a lot of people who come from business, but it's the scientist that brings the business people to be the head of the companies.
Yeah,
And oftentimes there has been a few. I don't want to name them just because I don't want them to feel bad about it.
sure.
But they bring in a very business focused commercialization individual, and they go to market too quick without doing the science. And then what happens is that they don't try to understand or put themselves in the shoes of the people who they're building a technology or they're treating or helping. And that's where they fail, is that they don't understand the core scientific or engineering makeup of what the technology they're building is, and they're just pushing it out. Because in business, you're a salesperson. You just sell.
Yes.
Selling is a very different beast than raising money and doing clinical trials, right? Like, very different beast. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. The only thing that where I'm not sure where we align 100%, because exactly what you tell me, I have seen so many examples for people come from STEM, having a great product, engineered a great product, and the science behind this is rock solid, but they never figured it out to bring it to the market, never bring a product market fit in a sense. And then in addition to that, they most of the time have like either the confidence or even maybe the arrogance to not be, let's say, coachable enough to understand that they might be best suited for R&D, heading R&D or heading product development, rather leading the company, because it's like, as I said, like it's a balance between these two different, very, very different mindsets and very different approaches to how to conduct a business and stuff like that. So that's interesting that you have like almost the opposite of that. And
let me backtrack.
Okay.
I don't think that you shouldn't have a business person be involved in the execution and executive team of a company. Right? You need that. You need that business, that structural organization in the form of a COO, a CFO, the financial, and all those things.
Yeah.
But the person who makes the decision and creates a mission and vision of the company should be the scientist. They can be an R&D, they can be a CSO or whatnot, but at the end of the day, if the core sort of idea and innovation doesn't come from the researcher that's doing it, people have different personalities. I completely agree. Like a lot of my scientists and engineers, I would not stick them in front of a person because honestly, they would crash and burn, and because they wouldn't know what to do with how to talk. Right? It's a completely different beast. Yes, I understand. And so there comes a time where there's a difference between being a startup and trying to build a product and innovation that actually is usable. And then in the growth phase, you bring in a new CEO who's a business person who has experience to drive the growth, to drive the sales, to drive the marketing, right? There's two avenues to that. You can either train your founder who is a scientist who has potential to become a business person, or you buy a business person in and teach them the mission and vision with the core team, right? I think in the sense of OptoCeutics, I'm being trained to be that. Maybe I won't be that person in the future. Someone else is going to come in who knows and understand the sort of business avenues and savviness of what it takes to grow a company. And I will accept that at any day because I want to make sure that whatever we do is going to be a beneficial and has a far reach to the people who need it most. And so for me, it's about being able to be agile in the
Yeah.
way that we are, you know, conducting and in building a company, but also building a culture based off of credibility and scientific rigor rather than a financial projection and budget, right? There's a very big difference between those two. And that's
Oh
why I
yeah.
say you can
Oh yeah.
teach business to a science person. It's very hard for me to tell you the basic molecular mechanism as to the neural simulation of the brain if you're a business person. And that's all I'm saying. That is the
Yeah.
only thing that I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's why, no offense to the business guys, love them to
No,
death.
no. But I think you made a really great point of how these different like perspective should work together going forward. Of course, from my
Mhm.
perspective, I have like a slightly different scale of it. I can give you also an example. Of course, it's not in the like neuroscience field, but do you know Informatica, the company? Yeah, and you know Oracle. You know how this end up like most
Yeah,
people
yeah.
don't know Informatica, and the whole premise of it was Informatica had the superior technology in engineering. Nevertheless, Oracle was the one that there were like in particular Larry Ellison. He was this guy that was so aggressive that he sold like versions of their product which deployed like 3 years later down the line, and he was so aware of that this is so important to be the first in the market
Exactly.
to capture the market, that they end up being this huge company right now. And so of course, like I that's why I tip slightly forward that. Nevertheless, I also see in your specific field there's like a specific like the product needs to be scientifically sound and proven in that sense that it has an impact on in your case it's these are patients, right, that we are talking about.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way, is that yes, you need to be agile and be on the market, but you also need to be
Yeah.
credible, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you I've taken a dual path
Yeah.
sort of strategy here. Let's use Oracle and informatics as an example, right? Informatics was so technical. They were so hinged on holding on to their technology until it was perfect
Yeah.
to release it on the market, do
Yeah.
all of the studies, do everything that Oracle was able to capture the market
Yeah.
with just small amount. They weren't the engineer who needed everything perfection. They needed
Mm-hmm.
the let me test this out on people and understand how they would react to it. Do they want it? Do they want to use it? Right? That is a very
Mm-hmm.
much smart strategy on Larry Ellison's part. Um, that's exactly what we're doing. We are completely doing the scientific rigor in clinical trials and phase 2 clinical trials right now in humans. But at the same time, what we did is we entered the market as a general wellness product to
Mm-hmm.
have people use the product, understand it, and we're the first on the market as a clinically backed research group to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while other people are either no clinical trials and no credibility, or they're so hyper focused on only the clinical trial phase that they don't even have a product out yet. So time will tell, right, whose strategy is best when it comes to neurotechnology and these kinds of things. But I do think having this dual path is my way of being like, I am a scientist. I do have scientific credibility, but I
Mm-hmm.
do understand the business of the game. Is that
Yeah.
the first person out and to do it the best and most
Mm-hmm.
credible is going to capture the market.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the reason why, I don't want to be I'm sort of the black sheep is what I tell you is I is I don't want to be that scientist who's so fixated on only doing the research and forgetting the fact that the only way that it's going to be translatable is that you're going to have to capture the market. You're going to capture the attention of the day-to-day person who wants to understand how does this benefit me in a layman term and not in a way where, again, what is a neurosimulation of the neurons and the oligodendrocytes in the brain? No one wants to hear that. How is this going to help me wake up in the morning and feel better? How is this going to help my memory? Is what more people want to know and understand. Um, and that's sort of where I think the best sort of transition from science rigor to industry is going to be, and that's going to be the future. Those who can meet in the middle and not go too extreme is the key, is where I'm seeing
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting because
it.
in that regard, I'm fully aligned with you, and I have seen that time and time again. Like the best companies right now, they understand that they have to have like a dual strategy in that sense. Start with a consumer product, develop their own product on the side with clinical trials. And I have seen it, for instance, with Pulsetto. They are really big in the consumer wellness market right now. Nevertheless, they are planning a separate entity where they focus with clinical trials on patient, and it's a different ball game. But nevertheless, you have the benefits of both sides of it, and I feel like if you are playing this game, this is probably the best strategy going forward.
It is. I mean, Aura Ring's doing the same thing, right? They're doing the wellness, the sleep, and all those things. But on the side, they're doing their clinical trials and trials
Hmm.
on female reproduction, pregnancy, sleep, and all those things. And that's where society is going towards. And if we
Yeah,
are so fixated and stuck in the traditional way of doing things, you're going to
yeah,
be left behind, honestly. So it's those who can pivot or even like understand where the sort of transition of the world is going is going to be successful. It's the same thing with AI, right? Like people are either scared of AI or embracing it. And I think
yeah,
you have to find a balance of where you embrace it and where security is, but also those who understand to use it as only a tool and not a crutch sort of thing
yeah.
is going to succeed. But that's a whole nother topic that we can go all day on, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's you're completely right on that. But I agree in that sense. And the other thing that most people underestimate is doing a clinical trial needs a lot of, first of all, data, people involved, and also, of course, there are costs attached to it. So if you want to go like, let's say, like the typical clinical route, FDA approval route, you have to get that paid as well, and you have to gather the resources as well. And when you have a product with potentially millions or 100,000 or maybe thousands of people that are actually using it, doing a clinical study is way easier than just starting from scratch, and then also having to get the data, get people to apply for the clinical trial and stuff like that. Because I spoke with a founder who told me like, hey, we have great data, but it's not enough. We need more people using it. So I think there's a lot of components to that, and I think you captured it very well the way you explained it. But I
Yeah, I
think
mean, there's something called post-market
we
trial,
touched.
right? So we can beat that up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great remark. You're completely right on that. But I think we went ahead a bit in that sense, because one thing that I was asking myself is how OptoCeutics came to be, because I understood you are I think 8 founders in total. Now I have
Yeah.
an idea why this is working out, because it feels familiar to be in a big family in a sense. But how you have founded this company, and how does it work with 8 founders?
It's very interesting, right? I mean, as you can tell, I love the number eight. I'm the eighth child. We have eight co-founders. We incorporated August 8th, 2018. The number eight follows me all the time. So apparently that happens. It's very interesting how the company was founded. It's a spin out from DTU and UC Berkeley. I was in my third year of my PhD, and I met a professor who was doing a exchange. He was from DTU, yes, Browing, and I literally was just seeing him before he was giving a talk, and I just saw him talk about blue light, its impact on alertness and reaction time, and I came up to him and I was like, "Hey, by the way, I'm studying neuroscience and endocrinology and circadian disruption and how blue light impacts, and aging
Hmm.
and all those things." Um, and he's like, "Let's just get coffee." And I was like, okay, well, it's not gonna hurt. So I got coffee, and that shows you the importance of saying yes sometimes and taking a risk and talking to somebody. I just wanted to put that out there for all the young kids who are afraid to go up and talk to a professor. Just do it. Uh, and we had a talk, and he brought up this paper that was just published by MIT, Levi Sai and their group, and talking about how strobe light at 40 hertz can actually reduce plaque in the brain and help cognition in mouse models. What I said to him was, strobe light is extremely hard to apply into a real world human environment because you don't want to be walking in the room and having strobe light flashing at you. It's like going into a horror house during Halloween. Not everybody like that, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically said, "What would you do, Mai?" And I was like, "Well, understanding the retinal ganglion cells of the eyes and the brain and how it functions, if you can, if you can build a technology and build a light technology that can mask this light and still stimulate the brain at 40 hertz, so you can apply it into a room and people barely notice it and it looks like a normal room light, that's fine. It'll work. Then you can create an impact. Then you can use it in human sort of environment." And he said, "Hey, that's great. Let's patent it." This is me as a PhD thinking I'm going to go into academia and be a teacher, being like, I don't know what a patent is. Can you teach me? And so the next day, we wrote a patent together, along with other professors to help us. And he invited me to Denmark, and he said, "I have a group of engineers who are extremely intelligent and smart, and they can potentially help you build the technology."
Mm-hmm.
Being the typical American that I am, I was like, I don't know where Denmark is. Um, and I was like, I just met you like 2 days ago. We filed a patent together. I'm either going to go to Denmark and get kidnapped and killed, or I'm going to have a great time. Okay, I'll go to Denmark. So that was the story about.
Okay,
This is the honest take, right? That is literally what I was like.
I
Ugh.
love it.
Yeah, my mom was like, "You're going where? Are you going to be okay?" And then I realized, I looked Denmark up. It's like one of the safest country in the world, which again, geographically challenged American that I am, I was like, "Oh shit, it's actually like 11 hours of flying." I didn't even realize that. Um, went to Denmark, met some of my co-founders. We
Hmm.
brought in other people to help us out, and we decided that, everyone who helped us out during our journey, we want them to feel like they're a part of the company. We want them to be a
Mm.
co-founder.
Yeah.
That's why there's eight, because all of the students and all of the professors that were involved in some sort of way was sort of impactful to the culmination and the ideation of the company. And we don't want it to just because I have the patent or because the other guys built it, that other people don't feel like it could be their own. And therefore, we just became a big happy family, incorporated it, and ended up with eight people. That's a story if
Okay.
you really want to
Okay.
know.
Yeah. It's amazing story. It's also, as you said, like it's remarkable that the number eight is following you. I mean, number eight stands for abundance. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Let me clarify. I did not incorporate the company on that date. Marcus, my co-founder, who was in Denmark at that time, decided that was the day that he was going to do it. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. It happened.
yeah, that's great. That's great. But coming back to the technology, so to summarize it, and if I understood it correctly, so um, the first thing was that 40 hertz of light, the frequency of 40 hertz of light is very potent of stimulating the brain, right? And the
Yeah.
problem was the way it's protrude, or the way it normally looks like, it's very like you can clearly see it. However, you have created a pattern and also a device that mask that light, that you don't see it, right? And and how have you achieved that? So basically, I have an idea how you can come up with a pattern, but what is the process involved to mask the light that it's not visible for the
Yeah,
eye, but has still the same um, frequency?
yeah, so that's where the Technical University of Denmark came in, right? So color flicker fusion and using color mixing and understanding and creating a whole new device, right? We had to create our own computer chip basically in order to mix everything and control all the light setting. It wasn't an easy task. It took us a very long time, like spending countless nights trying to develop it, talk to photonics professors, talk to engineers who can build it. We literally build our own chip that can go into the device now that actually controls it. And also understanding what the waveform of the light that comes out,
Yeah.
where it can stimulate the brain was extremely important. So it took us quite a long time to do that. And I think when people look at the device, it looks simple. It's on purpose, right? Like the
Yeah.
simplest thing is sort of the hardest thing to build. And so that's the reason why we use various color mixing sort of strategy that typically is not done in even screens or phones and or even light settings, right? There's different colors that we had to do. And so it's creating an entirely new, we call it invisible spectral flicker, which means
Mm-hmm.
the flickering is invisible to the eye. And
Yeah.
you know, surprisingly now, a lot of people are starting to try to learn how to use that for other applications, which we're very proud of. And by then we also have to utilize EEG, which then looks at electrical signals in the brain to make sure that even though it looks like it's a stagnant, almost imperceivable flicker light, does it
Yeah.
stimulate the brain? So going through the
Yeah.
fMRI studies, going through the EEG, so it took
Yeah.
years of sort of development before we even tried to put it on the market, right? And so it's not as most people would say, it wasn't done overnight. The idea is there, and
Yeah.
ideas are a dime a dozen. The
Yeah.
execution took a really long time.
Yeah. And I try to understand, or can you walk us through why the brain gets stimulated through this frequency? What happened in the brain when it goes through your eyes and gets processed? What was the mechanism behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our entire being, our brain, our body, it's a set of like electrical signals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's fast signals or slow signals. And we that's how we function by having different sort of electrical signals in the brain. And 40 is in the gamma range, and it's for alertness, concentration, and plays a very large role in memory and cognition. And we've known this
Mm-hmm.
for 50 years. We've done
Wow.
invasive sort of putting electrodes in the brain and seeing if we shine lights in the brain through the electrodes in a very invasive way, and how does that impact the way that neurons are signaling to each other, because that's what the brain is. It's all these little billions of sort of signaling that's going really really fast or really really slow. And so typically, like when you're winding down, going to sleep, you're in sort of that theta, sort of, delta theta. And then your brain then sends like hormone signals of like melatonin. And then when you're alert, when you're waking up, you have that gamma theta switch, which means
Mm-hmm.
serotonin and the alertness. Basically, I'm trying to think about how to say this in the most layman term. Then you're slowly waking up, and gamma is what's helping um, keep you alert and awake and have dopamine signaling and everything. And so we've understood this. We've understood the role of different speed of signaling, right? Like with people with ADHD, they just have hyper signaling of the brain, which is way bypass gamma, that
Yeah.
they can't control. And then you have people who have depression who has really low signaling in their brain. And you can see 15 to 20 years before symptoms arises in Alzheimer's, that the gamma frequency is actually declining and really wild, whereas in a healthy individual, their gamma is actually stabilized. And so understanding that, and if we can utilize our understanding of gamma and control it exogenously, uh, can
Mm-hmm.
we then basically act like a pacemaker for the brain
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to
Yeah. I
stabilize
get
it
it.
to function, right? So that's sort of where my example is more of a pacemaker is, for the brain. We always think about exercising to improve our
Yeah.
heart,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
we never think about exercising our brain. It's
Yeah.
just supposed to be one of the most important muscle in the body, but we never think about how we can optimize and make sure that it's not inflamed. Like when you over exercise, your
Mm-hmm.
muscles get inflamed, you get sore. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
with your brain when you're overstimulated, when you're doing all these things, but you're never trying to help recover it, right? So that's
Yeah.
how light and sound or neural stimulation today is working. is
Mm-hmm.
sort of bringing in that balance in training it and helping the recovery phase of the information in the brain. That's how I see it. But yeah,
Okay, but it's fascinating, and also on the one hand, I think you do a great job how you explain it. Um,
thank you.
for people that might not be in neuroscience, and I mean I have an understanding, but not far as deep as you have, and it's exciting to hear what is possible, and really seeing how things work together in that sense. What I have asked myself is, and you described like the process of creating that product. Was there a moment where you think we might not achieve it, and how have you overcome that moment, if that happened?
I think all the time, right? Especially when that's the honest answer is like, as a first time entrepreneur, as a scientist turned entrepreneur, uh, you always have that imposter syndrome of like,
Mm-hmm.
can I make this work? You always have other researchers because it's such a green topic. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you 7 years ago, barely anybody talked about, non-invasive neurostimulation with light and sound. Like people would be like, "What? You
Yeah.
can use light and sound to like stimulate the brain?" Um, People used to laugh at me, and you get so many doors closed, and people are just like, no. You get so many
Mm-hmm.
no's. I'm gonna say this. I apologize for the language. You're gonna be eating a lot of shit sandwiches um, from people because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, you're the only person who can believe in your idea, and you find other people who believe in your story and what you're doing, and you have to have enough thick skin to continue doing it. And I think now, if I look back 7 years ago, uh, at the Alzheimer's conference 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, no one was talking about neurostimulation.
Yeah.
Today, like every other poster and every other conversation is about neurostimulation. There's a neurostimulation tech conference that I'm at right now, right? Like that sort of field has changed, but definitely, funding wise, I've never raised money. I'm a scientist. I only talk about science. Getting people to believe in the idea and changing the way that I talk from a scientist to
Mm-hmm.
building a story and getting people to believe that something could happen if you just are able to just live slightly uncomfortable, I would say, and believe in the impact work that we can do. We're always living on
Yeah.
a very thin line of we're gonna die tomorrow, we survive today, sort of thing. Still every day, where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, like, am I gonna be able to do this? But I'm very fortunate that I have people around me. That's always like, my, you're doing good work. The customers that we have, or even the patients that we have, that actually sends us emails of stories that they're like, you know, by the way, my wife who had prefrontal dementia got
Mm-hmm.
up today and did the dishes. That might not mean something to you or somebody
Yeah.
who's not a caretaker,
Mm-hmm.
but prefrontal dementia makes someone lose all motivation to do anything. They just sit there,
Mm-hmm.
and to get a glimpse of the person that they once were, even though that's moving slightly insignificant to just a normal person looking in,
Yeah.
to that caretaker, to that partner,
Yeah.
it meant the world to them, right? And then I think for me, I think that's success already.
Yeah. Yeah.
It keeps me going, right? I maybe tomorrow will fail. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I've already succeeded in making an impact in one person's life. Anybody who comes after is also just cherry on top. And again, every day I feel like we're gonna not make it, but that's a part of the journey, which keeps me always on my toes. But you know what? If you're not living life on the edge and falling over slightly a little bit, you don't feel the excitement. So I'm gonna take that. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah, you did, and you sprinkled a couple of things on top of that, which were worth mentioning, 100%. And yeah, I totally understand it. And the thing is, as you mentioned, like seeing that you have an impact, making a difference, and I think these are very small, minute, small little things that makes a difference, and that you find a resource within yourself to say, okay, no, I keep on going, and we make it work somehow. And you have to find like these small miracles each and every day, and sometimes they are bigger, and sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. But I think the way you described it, and also I think the way the product that you are building and how it impacts life with people, I think if you're the kind of person that feeds off of that, I think that's something that can drive you a long way, a very long way. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what I was wondering is the transition to being in academia and then venturing to be an entrepreneur, having to raise money. How was that for you? Like specifically fundraising, raising money from
Yeah.
investors. How was this process for you, and how was the process, and what what was the need for you to learn or to relearn in order to make it work?
Yeah, it's been a very large hockey stick learning curve. If I can be honest, it's very difficult, right? I think the way that I speak now is definitely very different than how I speak about science and the work that I did years ago. I was very technical, how do you say, very nerdy in the way that
Mm-hmm.
I speak because I was taught to
Yeah.
give talks at, large conferences where all of my peers would understand the technical language that I was using.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like learning how to be a CEO and build a culture where you have to interact with a lot of people and different kinds of people. Fundraising as a woman is really hard. Only 2% of investment actually go to women-led companies, even though women-led companies are less risky and considered more successful. Especially during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, right, where we shut down for like 2 years. We couldn't do clinical trials, we couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do anything. So what do? You basically just hold on tight for the roller coaster while it's going downwards, like as fast as possible. Um,
Yeah.
Being strong and in your sort of conviction to strive and standing firm in your decision, especially when, as a scientist, when we decide to release the product onto the market before we even finish clinical trials,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the number of people that came to us, number of scientists, the number of like association being like, what are you doing? You can't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And me being like, no, I can because I'm not claiming anything. The only thing I'm doing is just helping you sleep and concentrate. And if
Yeah.
you want to give it a try, great. If not, it's okay. You will find people who would like to use it. The number of, I can tell you, like scientists, you had scientists telling you you're wrong, and then you had business people telling you you're wrong. And it's you standing in the middle and having that conviction to say, no, I'm doing the best thing that I know from my experience with the clients, with the patients and their family, and being okay with a lot of lies thrown at you all at once,
Mm-hmm.
and protecting also your team.
Mm-hmm.
Because the most important thing in a company, other than like just doing the right thing, is having a team that will work in the hard times.
Yeah.
And I think learning about that and creating a sports team is what I like to say, is because a sports team is not just family. They're family who want to bring in the right talent, and you need to trade away the ones that aren't to bring in the
Yeah.
right ones. Um, I had to learn that, on the go, is what I had to say. People didn't invest in medtech. Medtech, it was, for the last couple of years, it's been sort of the dead zone. It's risky. So going out and raising money for something that's not only in a green field where no one understood, and medtech is basically a double-edged sword where they're just like, really, Mai, you're going to pick the hardest thing to do? And I'm like, yeah, if it wasn't hard, why would I do it, right? But, you know, um, yeah, so I think also imposter syndrome is what I said, is that I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most sort of rewarding conversation that I had was with a student from Singapore who came up to me afterwards and said, I've never met an Asian woman who's in neurotech in technology who's doing something that you're doing. So you're telling me, as an example, as a role model, that I can do something like this, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
always been tech in general has always been a male
Yeah.
dominated field.
Indeed,
Um,
yeah.
and so like standing tall and knowing like my words and what I'm saying is not bossy and demanding, but it's
Mm-hmm.
strong and like has, impact is what I want to project to the world
Mm-hmm.
and to people in that I'm creating change. Um, and so that's sort of like a very hard thing to learn, especially if you're coming from a scientist and you're like, how do I stand tall and be a businesswoman? That's a really huge learning curve. And I'm very like fortunate that I have mentors and women mentors who have
Mm-hmm.
told me like, I just give zero fucks, I'm sorry, about what people have to say to you and like just do what you believe in. And the people who believe in you
Mm-hmm.
and the investors who come in, those are the people who want anyways. You don't want stupid money. You want smart money who will believe in the impact and the work that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, not
Mm-hmm.
the dollar sign that's going to be there. And so I've always made it that my model, right? Like zero fucks given. Let's go. We're just going to go
Yeah.
and whoever we impact.
Yeah.
Sorry about my language. I'm just
Sure.
quoting, but yeah, for your audience.
But I think it's candid, and that's a great thing about you. And the other thing is also, I think at some point as an entrepreneur, you have to learn that in order to be successful, you will have a lot of people disagreeing with you. The majority will disagree with you, but you can stick with maybe 10 or even less percent of people that are really really like you, and they cheer for you and all these kind of things, and with them you can be successful. But it's quite a mind shift, because everywhere you go, even in school, it's like you are trained in a way that everybody needs to like you, and if the majority agrees with you, then you're on the right path, which is totally opposite in terms of business, in also in life in general. It's like, of course you will have people, but that say it's not going to work, or you're wrong, whatever it is. But most people misunderstand that a lot of people are projecting their own beliefs on you, and the biggest mistake that you can make is taking their belief and internalizing it to yourself and make it your own belief. And I think this is encouraging or disencouraging the people that might do something extraordinary. And I think in life, as you said it, like we have to do something that is challenging, because this is part of what makes life fun. Of course, not everything needs to be a challenge, but I think if you have a, let's say, balance of challenging things to do, where you think it excites me and I can learn something and I can stretch myself out of the comfort zone. I think for me at least, and I think for you it's the same. Is like makes life worth living, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's more exciting to buck the trend and go against the grain than it is to just be one of the drum. Uh, no offense
Because
to those who take that order, but
yeah, I mean, if it's for you, then it's for you. But I got you. I mean, some say like NPCs, non-playable characters.
yeah,
Yeah, but anyway,
basically.
um, what I and you touched on this. What I wanted to ask you is, I mean, your product, the name of the product, the consumer product is EV Light, right? And it has an impact also on ADHD. And and you briefly mentioned it, that ADHD brain, or somebody who has ADHD, is very different than a normal brain, and it's the activity, right? Can you unpack it a bit, that I can better understand it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for us, we started, our main goal was looking at Alzheimer's and cognition. And as we were going through the trials and the post market into people's homes, a lot of the feedback that we got was, hey, Mai, like it really helps me with concentration. It really helps with my attention. It
Mm-hmm.
really helps with focus and alertness. And so we were like, wait. And then I've had people who had ADHD who said, you know, this really helps me. And for me, it was like we never intended to study that. We never intended to understand that. We just started a clinical trial in Denmark now to officially look
Mm-hmm.
into it and how it can impact, those who are taking medication versus those who aren't, those who have right hemisphere ADHD versus excitatory ADHD versus depressive ADHD, because those are very different forms of ADHD. But ADHD is just a lot of times you are so smart as an individual. Your brain is just hyper firing, where
Mm-hmm.
you process things really fast. And the problem
Mm-hmm.
with that is when you process things so fast, uh, you skip the attention to it and you just jump to another topic really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so understanding that if you can just slow or speed up, like in depression and in other disorders, if you can just equalize it and you train it
Mm-hmm.
to be stable, like your heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can have fast moving heart pace,
Yeah.
slow moving, which is not good. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
we're sort of the pacemaker for the
Mm-hmm.
brain, where now if you can just calm the brain down for someone who is like hyper alert or hyper attention deficit, can it bring them to focus and feel normal? Not
Yeah.
normal, but just feel like themselves, right? Without jumping from topic to topic, without like outbursts, because sometimes those outbursts are your neurons hyper firing, and then you don't know how to control your emotions and feelings. And that's why kids with ADHD have all these outbursts at night and all those things. And so
Mm-hmm.
we really try to understand, like, what is the impact of concentration in the brain? What is the impact
Mm-hmm.
of hyper alertness and all those
Mm-hmm.
things? And if your brain is on all the time,
Mm-hmm.
can we slow down your brain? It's sort of a mindfulness, right? People, we did a EEG on someone who does meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and I swear their power spectrum for 40 hertz was like off the chart because they practice mindfulness. And they also so there's a lot of things are involved. There's physiological and neurological sort of cyclical effect. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
it was so important for studying, aging and neuroscience in the brain, to incorporate not only, your food, your diet, your exercise. That's what people are doing now for their body.
Mm-hmm.
So what else can you do for your brain to then enhance that ability to slow down the brain aging,
Mm-hmm.
is where we're going. And ADHD is an inflammation of the brain. Depression is an inflammation of the brain. Anxiety is an extreme. Circadian disruption, sleep
Mm-hmm.
disruption, inflames your brain because it increases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which makes you stress more, which makes you sleep less, right? So it's like a cyclical, like rolling ball effect. Um, how do we prevent that? We're not waiting till someone has symptoms of the disease. We want to backtrack 20 years, understand that there are things
Mm-hmm.
that inflame the brain, that makes it hyperactive or underactive, and slow it down and see how we can actually improve sort of these physiological behavioral effects to then down the line decrease your risk of getting cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, and dementia, and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
things, right? Because it's a lifelong thing. You can't
Mm-hmm.
fix it with a pill. You might
Mm-hmm.
be able to slow or like stop some of the symptoms, but to get to the core foundational impact, you have to start
Mm-hmm.
way before.
Yeah. But then, to summarize something, I think I just had a new insight. So, on the one hand, if I understood you correctly, is like the brain can get inflamed when the rhythm is, for instance, too high. Just like a muscle that is overused. But because the only way I thought like inflammation is a thing is when it comes from nutrition or like a certain disease that is in your body. So it's nutrition can be one part or a disease, but it can be also like hyperactivity in a sense, like the brain is just too active.
Yeah, I mean, the brain controls all the endocrinology in your body, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
means all the hormones that control your food intake,
Mm-hmm.
your body signals to the brain, like
Mm-hmm.
people with diabetes, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
um, they have high inflammation of the brain because of glycogen like peptide 1. So when
Mm-hmm.
you have diabetes, you have a much higher chance of having cognitive decline because you have inflammation and high insulin and sugar in your brain. All
Yeah.
those things are involved. And we don't know that. A lot of people don't understand that because they just think like, yeah, if I can exercise and lose weight, great. But why are people who have depression, who are taking medication, still depressed and don't react to these medications? It's not because of the hormone, it's because of the
Mm-hmm.
brainwaves. So if you don't have the sort of enzymatic or the molecular changes in the brain that can actually take in that saying, hey, I have these hormones, no matter what you do, it's not going to help. Like if, let's say you live in Dubai and you have sun all the time and you're still depressed because people think seasonal depression,
Yeah.
that's the only reason why is that you don't have light, but
Yeah.
it's not true. It's
Mm-hmm.
hormonal, it's signaling in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Why do all these things happen? We can't just look at one avenue of like the disease and say we
Yeah.
know everything about it. It's because we know so
Yeah.
little about the brain. And that's going back to the first question you asked me, why neuroscience? We know so little about
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
that by understanding more on how it can interplay with physiology and neurology, right? How can we then improve health span rather than
Mm-hmm.
lifespan? You want
Yeah.
to add more life to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
self, not more years to your life,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, I have my own take on longevity, which I don't think everything is bad, but it's like the obsession of adding life. But I say
Yeah,
to myself, what's the point of living to 120 when I can't do anything and I forget everything and I'm just lying
exactly.
around? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's not working for me. So
No, I tell people to
I'm
just cut
also
the
agreeing
cord. If
with
I
you.
can't remember, if I can't do anything, cut the cord. Just cut the cord.
Okay, it's on camera, so we have it. But what I
Now
wanted to
people know,
ask,
by the way.
what I wanted to ask you is so, in particular, what you think is like the what are we going to see in the next 5 years in terms of non-invasive neuromodulation? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be a boom in neuromodulation, right? Whether it is
Mm-hmm.
sound, light, or even vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be an increase in usage of biomarkers to
Mm-hmm.
diagnose, like
Mm-hmm.
blood biomarkers. So it's very, low maintenance, where in-home biomarkers, physiological and brain age technology in terms of applications are going to be able to measure what your brain age is. And then in combination, you can use neural stimulation technology to then sort of prevent or slow down the decline and understand, is it even working, right? So what you can do now is you can go and get a blood biomarker test. The
Mm-hmm.
first FDA blood biomarker has been approved. I think a couple months ago was when it was
Mm-hmm.
approved. You can get a kit sent home now, and then understanding that and continuously changing your diet and food and integrating more of the physiological and the technology. In-home technology,
Mm-hmm.
which will be more accessible and portable, is going to come out. Brain simulation, all those things are going to come out in the next 5 years. But the key is, how do we utilize those neural stimulation and utilize the data that comes from it to develop personalized medicine? What I mean by personalized is not everyone is the same, right? Not everyone can just change one diet, change one neural stimulation and get improvement. How do we understand what your level of glycogen-like peptide, what your level of p-tau 217 is before treatment, during treatment, and after, and then pivoting and changing sort of the light setting or the sound setting and the timing of day, right? Photobiomodulation is extremely important. So like some people can use the device in the morning and have really good impact. Some actually work way better at night. So I think the future is going to end up being personalized treatment and medication, and understanding of prevention
Mm-hmm.
rather than disease treatment is
Yeah.
prevention treatment is in the next phase. And hospitals and systems are going to change to that. Rather than spending all the money on treating someone
Mm-hmm.
until they die, how do we
Mm-hmm.
spend on preventatives to lower
Yeah.
the cost, the socioeconomic cost of that, and then using machine learning and AI to be efficiently and effectively translating that data to people and getting them to understand it in a very layman term, where
Mm-hmm.
I can be reading it in a very technical, analysis data CSV file, but that doesn't mean anything to you as an individual. So I think that is the most important thing in the next 5 years, is having that
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem of information transfer and openness to neurostimulation and neurotech in general, I do think it's the future is bright. So that's the thing I'm thinking about. No pun intended for that part.
No, it's great. You touched a couple of things that where I think we might make a follow-up session on that, because it's like it's a topic for itself. But
Yeah.
parts of it I'm totally agreeing with you, and as I said, in parts of it I need to like spend some time to get a grip of it. But to wrap it up, what is your most optimistic version of the future, and what is your most pessimistic version of your future?
I mean, that's a hard question, right? Because I could be very pessimistic, but I can also be very optimistic. I think optimistic. I think we're going to change the way that we do healthcare.
Hmm.
That's my most optimistic, right? Is that we can finally find a way to slow down a disease, which is Alzheimer's and dementia, and basically eliminate or lower the level exponentially. We're projected to have
Hmm.
over 150 million cases increasing each
Wow.
year. I want to see that number actually stop or decline. I think that's a very optimistic thing to hope for. But we do need funding and resources to do that, and people's mind to change. Innovations like this. Pessimistic is we're just gonna be beating ourselves around the bush and continue funneling trillions of dollars into pharmaceuticals and into a dead end. And I'm sorry, but then the world's just gonna go to shit, and we're just gonna be repeating a vicious cycle. Sorry, you asked for pessimistic. I'm gonna give you pessimistic. Um, we work together. I think pharmaceuticals and neurotech can help each other
Hmm. Hmm.
accelerate the way that drugs can be treated
Hmm.
effectively, right? You can lower the amount of dosage of drugs that are needed to help symptoms by using neurotech and other technology like healthcare technology to advance certain things. So that's my 2 cents.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that one. And I have one more question. So, what is your like 5 to 10 year vision for OptoCeutics going forward?
Yeah, my vision is that we're going to be the leaders in preventive care, right? And understanding where we are in not only the Alzheimer's scene, but a lot of our technology and the way that we can integrate into homes, integrate into our
Hmm.
surroundings for society, where you can just walk into a space and not realize that you're getting beneficial effects of your brain. We want to be the leader in starting this conversation and people to be open and helping anybody. I think for me is going to be impactful and changing the way that we develop younger generation to think about their own health and get, especially as a scientist, I would love for more scientists to go in and take a risk, do something impactful. And so hopefully OptoCeutics will be the leaders in that conversation, and we will change the way, and our device will be in everyone's homes, or even you can just carry it with you. That's the goal.
Great, great. It was very great talking to you. I had
Yeah.
so much fun. Hopefully, we can do it another time, because I think we have enough topic to discuss. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you too, Rudy. And anytime you like to talk about the other topics, I'm sure I can talk all day about science and AI.
Indeed. See you.
All right, thank you. Bye.